Hey guys, it's your boy King Donald. I'm back with another video. So today I'm going to be doing what if Deku had a shotgun Quirk. So yeah, I kind of like this concept and yeah, I just decided to do it. So anyways, without further ado, let's get started. We start off this anime with Bakugo bullying a kid. And that's when Midoriya steps in and says, Kachan, stop bullying this kid. And Bakugo's like, Deku, what are you doing here? Get out the way before you get hurt. And he's like, I won't let you hurt this kid, Kachan. And Bakugo's like, Deku, do you really want to do this? Do you really want to get hurt? Come on, you're really quirkless. Don't make things worse for you. I'm not leaving, Kachan. Alright then, boys, let's get him. So Bakugo and his crew would start jumping Izuku and start kicking him, of course. And Izuku would feel fear and kind of regret for jumping in to save that kid, but he realizes it was the right thing to do. And he just says, if I had my quirk, I could have just stopped all of this. I could have just stopped being useless. I could actually become a hero. Come on, please, a shimmer of light, just something. And Bakugo was like, come on guys, let's do a big kick on him. Alright, in 3, 2, 1, come on. And then that's when Izuku just kind of puts them all off, and they're like, whoa, what the? And then they look at Izuku, and there's just a puff of smoke everywhere, and the smoke disappears, and they just see 10 Izukus. They're like, wait, what the? Izuku unlocked his quirk, you guys! And Bakugo's goons just run away. Bakugo's like, you cowards! It doesn't mean that there's more of them, doesn't mean Izuku's gonna be stronger. And Izuku's standing there, is like I said, Kachan, I won't let you hurt this kid. And Bakugo's like, alright then, Izuku, if you want to start acting tough, let's fight! And Bakugo will run at Izuku, but Izuku would just send these clones, and these clones would grab Bakugo's arms and legs and all that stuff and just start jumping him. And Izuku at first would think it's funny, but then afterwards he would compose himself and he's like, alright, sorry Bakugo, I just didn't want to let you. He was like, get off me! Screw you, Deku. And he would just walk away, and Izuku would be like, I got my quirk! I got my quirk! And just kind of shout out like that. So he'd go home and he'd tell his mom what happened, and his mom would think, wow, quite a cool quirk. Alright, we'll go to the doctor to confirm all of this. So yeah, they go to the doctor, and the doctor tells him that he has quite an amazing quirk. And she's like, what are you talking about? It's like, his quirk is basically a shadow clone. And like, what does that mean? It means that he can make a copy of himself that basically does the same thing as him. But every time he does that, it separates half his energy into it. But luckily for his son, he has a tremendous amount of energy inside of him. The energy does also give him a boost on his strength and speed, but not significantly, just more enhanced. And this kid could do a lot of useful things with his quirk. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to see all the capabilities from just the tests, but I'm sure if Izuku just keeps on using this quirk, he will find the potentials of the quirk. And Izuku's like, so wait, you think I can be a hero with this quirk? And the doctor smiles at Izuku's like, you're most definitely gonna be a hero with this quirk. And Izuku just shouts in joy and tells his mom, I want to be a hero already. And she's like, alright Izuku, thank you doctor. So they go home. So the next day, Izuku gets ready and he heads off to school, and everyone's hearing the rumors like Izuku does it, and Izuku announced, "Hey everyone, I got my quirk." They're like, "Wait, the rumors are true?" He's like, "Yeah, I unlocked it about like 2 days ago, and my quirk's called Shadow Clone." They're like, "What does that mean? You can make clones?" He's like, "Yeah, I can make clones." So like, wait, how many? Well, the doctor hasn't said specifically how many, but the first time I unlocked it, I made 9 clones of myself. So, yeah. And I was like, "Whoa, cool, what?" And it looks like, yeah. And also, I get a little bit of enhancements from the quirk too, so that's pretty cool. And I was like, "Wow, Izuku, your quirk's amazing. You're gonna definitely be a hero." And Izuku just kind of laughs until Bakugo comes, was like, "Hey, Deku, you think you would get away with that? You think you would get away from you jumping me?" And Izuku's like, "No, gotcha, and I didn't mean to." "You won't get away with this, Izuku. We're gonna fight right now. We're gonna settle this. I'm gonna show you that I'm stronger." And then one kid in the class like, "Are you sure about that, Bakugo?" He's like, "What?" It's like, "Well, your quirks just did develop, and you think you're stronger than Nezuko, and Nezuko believes he's stronger, but your quirks haven't fully developed. So how about this? How about you guys fight about like in 10 years?" And they're like, "What?" And Zuko's like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, think about it. By then, your quirks would have developed and you guys would have been grown and you could have done training to prepare for this. Just think about it as a competition, a friendly one." And everyone's like, "But why so long?" And it's like, it might keep him determined or something. And Bakugo thinks about it. He's like, "Alright then." "But then my explosions will be able to explode a whole Earth. So, a whole planet." I said a whole Earth. A whole planet. "So, I don't really care about this. Sure, I'll do it by then." And they're like, "Izuku and you?" And Izuku's thinking about it. He's like, "It is kind of weird, but why not? I might as well." And everyone's like, "Yeah, alright then. Let's just hope none of you guys move in 10 years. And Baku's like, "Alright then, Izuku. I won't be talking to you or doing anything with you until 10 years has passed. Alright? So you agree we're gonna have a full-blown fight to determine who is the best. You agree with Zuko?" And Zuko's like, "Yeah, why not, Kachan?" So yeah, Izuku takes this challenge on and he thinks of a solid plan he could do in the next 10 years. So Izuku starts to train with his quirk, trying to see how many numbers he can get. And Izuku realizes every day it keeps increasing more, from 10 to 30 to 50 to 100 to even more. So Izuku keeps learning about his quirk, and he realizes that Izuku gains the memories of his clones. It's quite weird. He experimented this by once making a clone of himself, and then going downstairs to ask his mom what they're having for dinner, and he disbanded the clone, and Izuku knew the information, and he's like, "That's a theory." And Izuku realizes this is really good, so we could expand on his knowledge and all that stuff. So Izuku's gaining knowledge quite quickly with his quirk, studying books and all that stuff, and he'll get homework done very quickly, because there is 10 brains working on one problem, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna get through that. So Izuku realized that he is lacking one thing. He is lacking technique, and he is lacking technique. And he tries to think of ways that he could improve his technique, and he realizes, might as well go into martial arts. Oh, for freaking every what if I make them go what martial arts. But it is a good thing, bro. Like, it makes sense. So, anyways, Izuku begins to work on his fighting technique and go to martial arts class. And Izuku, during out the years, would become even better and better. And Izuku would become even more of a threat and preparing for the day. For certain days, Izuku would forget about all of that until 1 year before it happens. And Izuku, when he remembers that, he just brings up the heat and goes even harder on the training. So, I'm gonna skip to the beginning of the anime. So, the teacher's asking, so I know what you guys want to do, all of that thing. And this time, I want to say Bakugo doesn't do his speech because he already knows he's getting in, and everyone knows that. Because even while Izuku was training, Bakugo was training too. You know, he took this seriously. In a way, this challenge that was set so long ago was really beneficial for both of them, and now they're even stronger. I wonder who that mastermind was. I'm joking, he's not coming up, and it was just random. So, anyways, the teacher says that, and he says that Bakugo and Midoriya seems like they wanna go to UA. And this time, Izuku and Bakugo just stare at each other, and everyone's like, oh, the rivalry continues. Who's gonna win? Izuku or Bakugo? And one guy's like, wait, today's the date. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? And it's like, oh, you guys weren't there during preschool. Well, 10 years ago on this day, some kid proposed the challenge that in 10 years, Izuku and Bakugo should have this full-on fight to determine who's stronger and has the better quirk. And guess what? Today's that day. Today, they're finally gonna settle it. And it was like, wait, Izuku and Bakugo gonna fight? They're like, all getting hyped, and the teacher's like, settle down. No one's gonna be fighting. But inside, when in his mind, it's like, oh, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of do want to see these fights. The two most promising kids in the school going at it full strength. This gets me excited. It's probably gonna be the same as in the UA special. The UA Sports Fest. Oh my gosh. The UA Sports Festival. Couldn't get it out there. So anyways, the teacher's like, alright, sit down, let's continue. So they continue, and doing this hours in the classroom, Bakugo and Midoriya did not care for what the material was on. They're both focused for this match. It's like kind of like an anticipated boxing match, something like that, bro. So after the bell rings, everyone's like, oh, everyone go outside, it's time. And Izuku and Bakugo both stand up at the same time, and they just pack their stuff. And Bakugo heads out with all these allegedly gang members, and Izuku walks out with everyone else. So Bakugo's outside getting stretching and ready, and Bakugo's really quiet. And everyone's like, they both so quiet, they both look so determined. And Izuku gets out and he starts stretching, and Bakugo goes into his actual stance. He's like, Izuku, you don't know how many years I've been waiting for this. I've trained my body to the limit. In a way, it's weird. Because of that stupid bet, I've become even stronger than before. I'm probably at the level of pro hero now. You're gonna regret this. And Izuku's like, probably not. I've trained too. I've learned techniques too. Going into his martial arts stance. I'm assuming if you guys watch Dragon Ball Z, I'm gonna do Goku stance. Goku stance. Wait, but there's different types of stance. Ooh. I'm gonna go with the newest stance he has, right? With the 2 fingers on top and his fist. Well, anyways, you guys get the point. He goes into a stance. And one kid's like, alright, here are the rules. You guys will not they're able to kill each other, and you cannot use your quirks where it's harming the people watching. And Baku's like, why do I have to limit myself so you idiots can watch? They're like, hey, we've been waiting for this too. And the kids from the small elementary class to win, whatever. And Baku's like, oh, damn it. As long as I beat him, that's all that matters. And it looks like I can agree. As long as I beat you, that's all that matters. And the guy said, alright then, positions, go! And then Bakugo just blitzes at Midoriya, and Midoriya makes a clone, a shadow clone, which is Bakugo tackles, and Izuku just makes a bunch of 10 clones, and it's like, alright then! And they all running at Bakugo at a decent speed, and Bakugo's like, alright then, and he starts boxing with the first one, and he explodes it away, and the second one, until they start overwhelming him, because Izuku's making even more clones. And the clones are holding Bakugo together, and Midoriya uses another clone to step on and jump into the air, try to smash into Bakugo, but Bakugo gets rid of those clones and kicks Midoriya while he's in the air. And he uses explosions to stay in the air and slam into the ground. And he was about to do a massive explosion when Midoriya had some quick thinking, and he made a clone to pull him out of there. And Midoriya's like, wow, Bakugo's gotten even stronger. But I'm stronger too. Shadow Clone! Well, I forgot to mention that to activate the clones, of course, he needs to do the Shadow Clone movement, the cross. I forgot the most important part of the... Well, you guys should have assumed, since, it's a current... Whatever, I'm wasting time. So Izuku does that, and he makes a bunch of clones. And Izuku kind of throws the clones like they're missiles and stuff. And it throws multiple at Bakugo, and Bakugo's dodged him in the air and stuff, blasting some, until one actually hit and tackled Bakugo. And Izuku came out of nowhere, and the ladder of Izuku just flung him, and Izuku came bolting like a missile, and he freaking hits Bakugo. And Izuku uses his martial arts and hits Bakugo more and does like a backflip kick, and then it makes a clone which kicks him again, and he makes another which pushes him back, and he pushes out Bakugo, and it's just a madness right now. And Bakugo is getting overwhelmed by the combos, but then he explodes the ground to make some space for him, and he's like, and he goes again, and he's about to explode Izuku's face when Izuku just kicks Bakugo off, and he regains his composure again, and Bakugo regains his composure again. And Bakugo's like, I'm not gonna lie, Izuku, your quirk's kind of annoying. And Izuku's like, I'm not gonna lie, Bakugo, your quirk's quite explosive. And he goes in again, and Bakugo's like, oh. And they start brawling, and I'm just gonna say it's basically this back and forth of Bakugo making explosions, like getting rid of his clones, getting occasional hits, and Izuku trying to win by using his martial arts and his quick thinking that he developed by having all those clones study it as much as he can and all that stuff. So the fight goes back and forth. Everyone's like, whoa, this fight is amazing! And they're all cheering, and people are having their bets like, I'm going for Izuku, I'm going for Bakugo. And then Izuku and Bakugo are just there. Izuku's grabbing his arm in pain, and Bakugo, his hands are hurting from overusing his quirk. He's like, damn it. Surprisingly, getting rid of Izuku's clones actually put strain on me. I didn't even use my ultimate attack. Well, screw it. Here's the time. And this is when Bakugo's like, you probably weren't expecting this, Izuku. And he jumps in the air, and Izuku's like, what? And Bakugo's like, he starts spinning, and he's like, howitzer impact! And he sends a massive explosion. Everyone's like, whoa, Bakugo! That could have hit us. And Bakugo's laughing. He's like, he's laughing. He's like, that would have done it. And he just sees a Nezuko just all beaten in his uniform, and he's bleeding. And everyone's like, whoa, what? Did Bakugo actually do it? They're like, wait, maybe we're taking this too far, you guys. And Nezuko looks at Bakugo and he grins him. And he's like, wait, what? And he just hears the explosion, the ground kind of crack, and Nezuko uppercuts him. Just like Naruto versus Neji, and Naruto, I said Naruto, and Nezuko emerges and he makes two clones which holds Bakugo, and Nezuko's like, it's over. And it was like, yeah, and they like wave it off. They're like, Nezuko wins, and it was like, yeah, excited, and the people placed their bets on Midoriya, won money and all that ish. And Nezuko dismisses the clones and he puts his hand out, and everyone's like, is he gonna take his hand? They're like, are they still gonna? And Bakugo, he's just thinking, he's like, and he takes the hand, and they were like, yeah. And Bakugo's like, you only won because of these extras right here. If it was just you and me, I would have dominated. But whatever. And Nezuko's like, yeah, I'm sure. Wow. I'm not gonna lie, Bakugo, your quirk is amazing. You really developed. And Bakugo's like, well, of course I did. Who do you think you're talking to? And Midoriya's like, in a way, this silly little bet that we made as kids really made us stronger at the end. I'm not gonna lie, Bakugo, I'm glad that we had this bet. And Bakugo looks at it and he's like, I guess so. And he kind of has that Vegeta attitude, you know? The good Vegeta attitude now, you know? And they kind of squash the beef. Well, they squash the beef and they become, well, friends. Yeah. So anyways, and Nezuko's walking home with Bakugo and they have bandages on them and stuff. And he's talking. It's like, so you going to UA too? It's like, of course, I'm gonna be #1 hero, so of course I'm gonna go to the best school in the nation. It's like, are you sure about that? I just did beat you in the fight. It's like, you didn't beat me, I'll let you beat me. And so he's like, sure. But I was just thinking, you know, since we spent like 10 years training by ourselves, why don't we train together for the UA exam? And Bakugo's like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. I do need a powerful training partner, and since you have clones, I have unlimited dummies I can use new moves on, so I guess you're useful to me. And this was like, why are you saying it like that, like I'm a tool? It's like, well, you offered to train, so, and they're like, whatever. So Zuko researches places where they could go to use their quirks and stuff, and he finds this beach, and Zuko registers if they can use their quirk, and it was accepted. And Izuku thought it was weird because quirk permission is never accepted this quickly. So Izuku's wondering about that, but he lets it go since he gets permission to use his quirk in public and train for it. So he's okay with that. So Izuku and Bakugo will start training at the beach almost every day, trying to enhance their quirk and stamina. Izuku also agreed to teach Bakugo the martial arts he's learned because Bakugo realizes that martial arts he was using was quite annoying and can be useful in the future. So Izuku and Bakugo are training their quirks until someone approaches them and he asks him, so you are the kids? And they look, they're like, who's this guy? And they look, and it's Sir Nighteye. He's like, I thought you guys would be a little more promising, but I guess this is what we have to deal with. And Bakugo's like, who do you think you're talking to? And Izuku's like, whoa, chill, Bakugo. Do you not know who that is? I don't give a damn. He's like, that's Sir Nighteye. That was All Might's ex-sidekick. And Bakugo's like, but that is still giving the right to insult me like that. And Izuku's like, right. Wait, what are you doing here, Sir Nighteye? He's like, I came to see the people I improved to use their quirks to train, and You guys don't look very as promising as I was told and as I saw. And it looks like, what are you talking about? Who told you about us? And how do you see us? He's like, well, I had someone look into that fight you guys did at school. At first, I was gonna call the authorities to get you guys to stop the fight, but I stopped to look and I saw something promising. And I thought maybe I could take you guys up to par and maybe make you trainee dummies for my prodigy. And they're like, what? So the only reason why you're interested in us is because we future training dummies? He's like, yes, exactly. But you must see with my training that your hero careers can really go further. So you consider it? And they're like, of course, I'm not gonna skip on this opportunity. Bakugo? And Bakugo's like, I don't like him, but like you said, Midoriya, I can't miss up on this opportunity. And Night's like, good. Well, let's get to work. So yeah, Nighteye would build up on their strengths and build up on the strength and also trying to get them a little experience. Not taking them on like big stuff, just letting them patrol the streets with them, and everyone thinks, is that your new sidekicks in the night? He's like, no, they just keep following me, and they're like, wait. He's like, so yeah, Nighteye would keep training him, and he also tried to maybe get him to use the weights, and Bakugo feels like he sees no worth in them, but Midoriya actually takes him into consideration, and he starts to train with him, trying to increase the weights of the weights. So yeah, after the 10 months, Nada would be like, I've trained you to my best ability and I'm sure you guys will exceed. I could get you guys recommendations in UA, but what experience would that give you? And they're like, come on, sir, we've been training for this 10 months and you still not warming up to us. He's like, I'm not giving you guys shortcuts to get into UA. If you want to get into UA, prove to me that you undoubtedly belong there by destroying the UA exam. You understand? And they're like, sure. Alright. This will be our last day, and that's the last time this will be the last time I see you guys unless you pass the exam. So if you fail, that's your own fault. And it just leaves, and Midoriya's like, well, thanks for the great encouragement, Sir Nighteye. And Midoriya be like, what you gonna get from Sir? He's like, I still think he's annoying. So anyways, Midoriya's like, I don't fail the exam, right? It's like, who do you think you're talking to? I say, yeah. So they go to sleep, and Izuku is excited for UA, the start of his hero course. So yeah, he heads over to UA and he meets with Bakugo, and Bakugo's like, what took you so long, Midoriya? Why you was so goddamn late? It's like, sorry, I was just getting my books ready, man. I was just trying to study a little before. And it's like, so you didn't study the night before? It's like, no, I was just saying, oh, whatever. Let's go in, Izuku. So they walk in and Izuku falls and Bakugo's like, oh. And then he's caught by someone. And she's like, sorry, I didn't mean to use my quirk on you. And Izuku's like, well, it's okay. And Bakugo's like, oh, who are you? And she's like, oh, I'm a Chaku Uraraka. I'm sorry. I just didn't mean to. It's like, no, it's fine. Could you release me or something? She's like, oh, yeah, sure. And Zuko falls on his feet. He's like, all right. Well, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Well, thanks for not letting me fall. That would have been real bad. She's like, yeah, no problem. Well, who are you? And he's like, get on my way, extra. And Izuku's like, oh, Kachan, what the heck? And Kachan's like, I'll meet you inside, nerd. And Izuku's like, damn it. Sorry about him. He just has a bad ego complex. And it's just like, no, it's fine. Well, aren't you excited to see if to see if we get into UA? And he's like, yeah, it's quite exciting. You know, this might be the end, but at the same time, this might be the start of everything. It's quite conflicting, isn't it? She's like, yeah, I'm nervous and excited at the same time. And they kind of have a small laugh, and he's like, alright then, I'm gonna meet up with my friend Bakugo, but hey, I'll see you in there, right? She's like, yeah. Alright then, see ya. So yeah, they go in and all that ish, and they take the exam. And President Mike starts explaining the second part of the exam and what they're gonna be doing, and they need to collect points. And makes that thing. It's like, what about and yeah, and Izuku and Bakugo are separated, which is quite unfortunate. Which Sir expected him, and they should have expected it too. So yeah, so Izuku heads over there, and he's starting to stretch, and he wanted to head over to he wanted to go and see Uraka, and that's when he stopped by Ida, and it looks like and he's listening to Ida, and he makes a shadow clone which sneaks behind him and peeks up on Ida. Uraka's like, hey, are you okay? She's like, oh, wow, you're back again. And it looks like, yeah, I just want to tell you need to relax. You don't need to be so nervous, alright? Just like, yeah, it's just, like you said before, this could really be the end, or this could be the start. I just really hope this is the start. And Midoriya's like, relax. You came here for a reason. You thought that you could make it into UA. So, relax and just do your best, alright? That's all the most we can do, honestly. Just like, you're right. Thanks. Say thanks. So yeah, President Mike opens the door and all that is, and Izuku goes in straight, and everyone's following, and they're like, alright then. Izuku's like, Shadow Clone Jutsu, and Izuku's like, let's expand the limit, and he just makes a bunch. They makes about 1,000 clones, and they're all just going around everywhere, and everyone's like, wait, what? And they're just seeing him take all the robots, like destroying them, all just like going inside, just ripping it apart and all that stuff. They're like, just not everything. So they have to hustle too, and the teachers look at him, they're like, wow, this kid's Quirk. And like, it's a cloning Quirk? Well, quite useful. How many is down there? I would say about 1,000. And All Might's just there smiling. It's like, who is that kid? And Izuku keeps carrying on, stacking points, getting a total of 64 combat points. And he keeps going. He's like, alright, I think that's then he hears the 0-point robot coming in everywhere. So everyone starts running the other direction so they don't get crushed by the 0-point robot. And Izuku was about to do the same until he hears a scream from a certain someone that he knows. He's like, wait, I know that voice. And he looks and he sees, wait, is that Uraka? And he sees the 0-point robot coming close to crushing her. He's like, crap, alright. And he makes 2 shadow clones to run at Uraka, and they help her out and they take her away. And Izuku's alright then, it's really time to expand my limit. Alright then, Shadow Clone Jutsu! And Izuku makes a Shadow Clone Jutsu and starts flooding of Izuku's, and Izuku makes 5,000 clones, and they're all just swarming up the 0-point robot, and everyone's like, what the heck? And the 0-point robot looks like it's completely covered in Izuku, and all the clones are just going inside the robot, dismantling it, and all that stuff, pulling wires, and the 0-point robot starts to malfunction and just shuts down, and everyone's like, what the? And Izuku's dismisses them, and they just see the original one on top of the 0-point robot, and Zuko's like, kind of does like a fist pump into the air like All Might stance, you know what I'm saying? So everyone's like, wow, I'm not gonna lie, he's kind of cool and all that stuff. So Zuko would go home feeling himself, you know, he's proud of what he's done and everything. And he would call Bakugo telling him, I think I've done really well. How about you? Saying, yeah, I know I'm getting in. That test was so easy. And Zuko's like, well, yeah, you could say that. So yeah, the 1 week goes past and Izuku finally gets his acceptance letter, which has All Might inside of it. All Might tells him that he done tremendous work and Yue is quite curious about his quirk and they'll love him. They would love for him to be in the hero course, and even more impressed that he was able to save a fellow, well, not classmate, technically fellow competitor. And yeah, he's accepted to UA. So with Zuko finally the next day, finally it's time to go to UA, and Zuko heads out and he's walking down the hallways just soaking everything in, and finally arrives at his class his class. So he opens his door and he sees Bakugo and Ida arguing, and Zuko just sighs. He's like, Bakugo, it's the first thing in the morning, first day in UA, and you're already causing trouble. And Bakugo's like, oh, Zuko, can you get this guy away from me? He's annoying. And Tenyo comes, I'm Tenyo, and all that ish. So yeah, they start talking and resolve things like they did before. And that's when Uraka comes behind. It's like, hey, it's the clone guy. And it's like, oh, hey. And they start talking and all that stuff. And that's when Eraserhead's like, it took you a whole 8 seconds for you guys to shut up. Back to those students, whatever. He says all that stuff and he tells them to go outside for the quirk assignment. So, Azawa starts to explain how the world is not fair and all that stuff, and schools need to stop babying the kids that are not as strong and need to all that stuff. And he tells Bakugo to throw this ball as far as he can. And since this time Bakugo has started training in it and actually improved his quirk, I'm gonna say this time he gets it's not a big significance. He gets 790 meters instead, and everyone's like, whoa. And Azawa says, you see, and Mina's like, this is gonna be fun and all that stuff, and he gets pissed off and he says whoever comes last will get suspended and all that jazz. So for the first test, which is I guess the speed, Izuku does decent because his physical stats is kind of enhanced when his quirks got awakened. So yeah, he does decent on that, above average, let's just say that. And all that stuff, he does pretty good. And for the grip test, he uses multiple clones, since Shoji could use multiple arms. So yeah, he does that. And for the ball throw, Izuku makes a ladder of clones so he can get it as high as he can, so he can throw it at the highest point and all that stuff to get it. And he does pretty good. And since his stats are more booster, I'm gonna say he does a fairly good 500 meters. And everyone's like, oh, well, good. Oh, good. So anyways, yeah, so after school they'll be walking home, Bakugo and Izuku would be walking home, and that's when Ida and Uraka come along and they start to develop a friendship and ish. So the next day they go to UA and all that stuff, and it wasn't really an eventful day until All Might comes in and is like, I am here, running through the door like a hero. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's All Might, and freaking out. And Izuku, since it's the first time seeing All Might, he's like, oh crap. And All Might in person is like, oh, it's All Might, oh my gosh, freaking out the most. And everyone looks at Izuku like, is he okay? And Balk's like, he's just a big All Might fan, he's a fanboy. And everyone's like, we couldn't tell. So All Might's like, thank you, young Midoriya. And he starts to explain what they're gonna be doing, and he's like, your hero costumes. And yeah, I'm gonna say Izuku's hero costume is gonna be like a ninja. It makes sense. So I want Izuku's suit to kind of resemble like a ninja, and he has like shuriken and all that stuff. And Uraka's like, whoa, Izuku, that's amazing. You look like a ninja. Izuku's like, yeah, that's what I was going for. I mean, my quirk, it isn't really, it can be combat based, but I think more I can do more in intel and stealth missions with this quirk. But, you know, and ninjas, the reason why they exist was because to do self missions and all that stuff. So it makes sense. And Rogue's like, yeah, it does. And it's like, well, I like your suit too. It's like, yeah, it's skin tight, but it looks like it's even better that way. And it's just like, oh, kind of has a blushing moment and all that stuff. So yeah, All Might starts to explain the exercise and all that stuff, and he says that they're going to be a hero team and a villain team, and he picks them out, and it's going to be the same people and all that ish. So right before the match, and Uraka's like, all right, what's the game plan? And Zuko's like, it's a simple game plan. And she's like, what is it? Overwhelm them. And she's like, huh? And Zuko just as All Might shouts, begin! And Zuko just starts flooding everything with shadow cones, just splurting them everywhere, and they just infesting all the hallways. And Baku's like, wait, what's that? And just hear loud footprints coming out of nowhere, and then they look at the door and just see a burst of Midoriya coming in. Ears like, ah! And Baku's like, damn it, Izuku! And he tries to explode them, but they just keep swarming in, and Baku eventually gets overwhelmed. And one of the clones touch the bomb, and All Might's like, the hero team wins! They're like, wow, quite a creative way to do that. And everything. And All Might tells him, obviously, the MVP of this was Midoriya, having probably one of the fastest ways to defeat this, and everyone's just impressed. And everyone's watching until they see Todoroki's, then they say that one's the fastest. And Izuku locks his eyes on Todoroki. He's like, huh, he's really good. Alright then. So yeah. So afterwards, Aizawa tells him that he was impressed and all that stuff, and they're gonna finally go to the USJ, and everyone gets excited, and he's like, alright, get your costumes and go on the bus. So they're on the bus, and Izuku's sitting next to Sue, and Sue asks, hey, so wait, Midoriya, what's your quirk exactly? Is that, my quirk's called Shadow Clone. Basically, I can make clones of myself, which have my strength and attributes. And every time I make a clone, it drains some of my energy, but fortunately for me, the doctor said I had a tremendous amount of energy, and not a lot of people have it. And yeah, and so I have to activate my clone. I have to make a cross sign with my finger. So yeah, and I was like, whoa. And it's like, oh yeah, and since my quirk activations, I had enhanced strength and speed. So, and I was like, whoa, Izuku, that's a great quirk. And they start saying their quirks, and they start comparing, and they have a tie between Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo, and all that stuff. So they finally arrive at the USJ, and they see 13 there, here to announce them. And she starts talking about what the USJ is and what the acronym stands for, until a purple portal starts opening up and villains start spreading out. Kirishima asks, is this a part of the training? She's like, and as I was like, no, this is real. 13, get the kids out of here. I'm gonna distract these guys. And Izuku's like, you can't do it by yourself. And he's like, that's a part of being a hero, kid. You gotta leap in. And Izuku hears that words, and he's like, yeah, you gotta leap in. And he jumps down and freaking 13's like, no, kid. And Bakugo's like, if he's going, I'm going too. And they go down and Toroku's like, yeah. And he goes and Kirishima goes and everyone's like, what? And people want to go, but then Kirigiri stops. He's like, where do you think you're going? And 13's like, stay back. And she tries to do it, but Kirigiri teleports them out of swim. So down there, all those guys, Bakugo, Todoroki, Kirishima, Deku, and Aizawa are fighting the villains, and Aizawa's like, I told you guys to stay up there. He's like, you said it. A hero can't sit back and do nothing. We had to help. And Aizawa's like, alright, just make sure you don't get hurt. These villains are not that strong. I'm sure you guys will be able to handle them. And they're like, right. And they just start demolishing everyone and all of that ish. And eventually they defeat all the villains. And that's when freaking Shigaraki's like, oh, you guys are impressive. You guys were able to defeat all the villains. And so I was like, what's so funny? He's like, no, nothing. It's just that, oh, I could see in your eyes you guys really thought you won there. And they're like, what are you talking about? And Shigaraki's like, you really think that we didn't come here prepared? Like I said before, we came here to kill All Might. Of course we have something planned. Nomu, destroy them. And then the Nomu just comes out. The Nomu starts walking. They're like, what the heck is that? And he blitz, and the Nomu goes for Kirishima first and completely knocks him out. And then he knocks Todoroki out and knocks Bakugo. And he was about to knock out Izuku, while Izuku just quickly made a cross with his hands and made 10 clones to make distance from the Nomu. And the Nomu's just there and kind of turns his head, and the Nomu goes again at Izuku's using these clones trying to dodge it and stuff. Have you guys seen Invincible? You guys know that girl that can make the clones, and she can make the clone take the hit. That's what Izuku's doing. And by the way, just quick pause right here. Watch Invincible, you guys. I'm not even capping, bro. It's so good. It's so good. If you guys have Amazon Prime, not Amazon Prime Video or something, yeah. But even if you have Amazon Prime, you can get Amazon Video. It's so good. I recommend it to you guys. Watch Invincible. It's so good. Well, anyways, back to the story. Izuku keeps doing that, and Aizawa's like, damn it! And he tries to use his quirk on the Nomu, and the Nomu doesn't seem to be slowing down. And Shigaraki's like, oh, you thought that was the only quirk he has? No. The Nomu has way more quirks. The Nomu has regeneration, shock absorption. He has tremendous strength and speed. The ultimate weapon that will kill All Might. And I was like, alright then. I may not be able to take out the Nomu, but I know he's coming. So right now, all I can do is take out you. And he turns off Shigaraki's quirk, and he captures him. And he's like, shut up, you scum. And that's when Kirigiri comes. Is like, not on my watch. And he makes a portal, and that's how it's just falling. And he takes Shigaraki, and he puts Shigaraki down. He's like, Shigaraki, okay? He's like, leave me. And as I was falling at it, it's like, crap. And he makes clones for that will catch Aizawa. And while he's still trying to dodge the Nomu, it's like, crap, what the? And he's like, alright, screw it. I may use up my energy, but I have to. Multi-shadow clone jutsu! And I forgot to mention it, but he knows, of course, that was pretty obvious, the amount of clones. But anyways, he makes a shadow clone jutsu, so he kind of distracts the Nomu for a while. And he goes to Aizawa's like, Mr. Aizawa, are you okay? Mr. Aizawa! But he got knocked out from the whiplash he got when Izuku caught him. He's like, damn it, I'm an idiot. But he's still breathing. Alright, clones, we gotta get him out of there. And they're like, you're right. And they they go and he sends some clones to like go and help some students around the USJ. We gotta get them out of here. We gotta stall some time until All Might comes. They're like, right, and they go out separating, go and help everyone and all that stuff. So Zuko's just standing there looking at the gnome just destroying all these clones, and Zuko's like, crap, I have no time. He's like, what am I supposed to do? And he keeps thinking, he's like, how am I supposed to, I can't defeat the Nomu, my physical strength, And he keeps thinking, and he's like, crap, until the Nomu defeats all of it. And he's about to go for Zuko, and Zuko's like, until the doors just slam open, and it's All Might. He stopped the Nomu, it's like, you stop right there. Young Midoriya, are you doing okay? And he's like, All Might. He's like, yeah. And All Might's like, alright, I'll take care of this. You take everyone, you take all the kids that are, you take everyone out of here, alright? Use your clones to evacuate, alright? And Zuko's like, you got it, All Might. And she goes like, All Might. And he's like, you foul villains. You'll regret this. And Izuku uses his clones to help his students guide them up there, and they're all up there, and Izuku dismisses his clones, and he's just looking at the fight between the Noma and All Might, and everyone's just impressed, like, what the? And All Might's like, did he join Smash or United? Whatever, he does the United States of Smash and smacks him out of the bullet, and everyone's just impressed of the amount of power the number one hero has. And Zuko realizes that he has a long way to go. So the students at UA were given a few days to chill out after that crazy incident. So yeah, they come back to school, and Aizawa tells them that they're going to do the sports festival, and they should really train up for it. So Zuko and Bakugo kind of no, actually they don't. They decide not to train together to see who would come out on top in the sports festival. So finally it comes around, and in the locker room, Todoroki goes up to Midoriya and challenges him that he's gonna beat him and that he's gonna prove to everyone that he's the strongest. Midoriya says to Todoroki, like, Todoroki, your quirk is awesome, but I'm not gonna let you stop me from getting number one. And Todoroki looks back at him and Bakugo says, hey, you challenged the wrong person. You really should be challenging me. And all that stuff, and everyone gets hyped. So they come out and all that stuff, and Midnight announces that Bakugo's going to be doing a speech. And he does the same speech in the anime saying, I'm gonna win, and everyone's like, oh, you arrogant bastard, and all that stuff. So Midnight starts to announce the first what is it called? Course? No. The first, what would you call it? First event. You could. First challenge. Well, yeah, okay. First event / challenge, and it was gonna be a race, and she tells everyone to get ready, and then they shall go and all that stuff, and Todoroki instantly freezes everyone, but most of his classmates were able to escape. So Zuko just starts running, and using his just pure speed, he's able to, be at the top, but he realizes that his speed alone is not gonna get him to number one. His speed alone is not gonna get him to number one, but that's all he can really do right now. So Zuko starts running, and Todoroki's ahead, and he freezes the 0-point robot as usual, and the 0-point robot as usual, and the 0-point robot was falling, and until it's just like, oh, I gotta get past that, and he makes a tower of his clones, and they kind of fall down to push Zuko ahead, and Zuko jumps off them, and is able to go through the 0-point robot before it fell down. And it was like, crap, until it was like, I was able to make it past. Alright then. And it keeps going, and Todoroki, Bakugo just blasts by and everyone does the thing. And Izuku was able to clear the cannons by using these clones to boost them off, and he was doing it quite quick, and Todoroki's getting pissed off again. Yeah. So finally, Bakugo is starting to catch up, and he's close with Izuku. So finally, they caught up to Todoroki, and they finally all on the minefields. This is where Izuku's at disadvantage. He realizes that he's the only one running on foot, while these guys... What the heck is happening? Oh, sorry, you guys. And, well, these guys are on surfing or something. So, yeah, Izuku basically comes up with the same plan as in the anime and shoots up to first place. So, yeah, Izuku was the first person to win the race. So, Midnight announces the second event, and there's going to be a cavalry battle where you have to have a team, and you have to collect other people's points by taking their headbands, and Izuku has the most points, having 10 million points, and everyone just stares at Izuku, and Izuku knows that he's everyone's main target, but he happily accepts the challenge. So Izuku was at first looking for partners, but he realizes I can be my own partner, and he doesn't care anymore. And well, Uraraka was about to ask him, but then he just went away. So she joined, Shinso's team, whatever. So Izuku is a whole team by himself with with him being at the bottom and stuff. And at the same time, this also made it hard for people to tell which one's the real Izuku, because all of them have the headbands, because he made a physical clone of himself, so they have to guess the right one. Well, they'll assume that he's on top, but that could be a complete lie. They don't know, so that's gonna be difficult. So Midnight shouts go, and all Izuku had to do, he just smiles. He's like, you guys are done, and he just makes us like a barrier of himself, just like a dome, and everyone's like, all right then. And Bakugo and Todoroki try to get past it, but they can't. It's just layers and layers of Izuku, and they're like, oh, whatever. And Izuku's just chilling there, and he comes first place in the cavalry battle, because screw it, why not? So finally, all the final battles start to happen. So it's announced that Izuku's first fight is going to be Shinso, and Izuku realizes that's a easy win in the bag, and it was. There's no need to explain it. Izuku completely trumps him with clones. So all the fights go the same, and this time Bakugo, let's just say, maybe goes easier on Uraraka or harder, depends. Because they are friends, so at the end of the day, so yeah. So yeah, it's finally the fight everyone is anticipating, Todoroki versus Izuku. Well, Izuku, before the fight, Endeavor approached him, telling him make sure to use his fire side. And Izuku tells him that stop making it sound like an object, he's your son for gosh sake. And he just walks off. So Izuku and Todoroki are on the stage, and President Mike shouts "Go!" and Todoroki makes a giant iceberg until they just hear a little rumbling, and just Izuku just burst out and burst out of the ice, and Izuku claws out, and just 50 Izukus comes out going to Todoroki, and Todoroki has to make ice to stop him, and Izuku just keeps making more to try to tire out Todoroki, because he realizes he's not going to use his fire side, and that's going to be his biggest downfall, because Izuku realizes that his quirk is just too awesome. And Izuku is overwhelming Todoroki, and Todoroki tries to move when Izuku just makes even more clones, and they're just following him around, and eventually Todoroki's side starts to freeze up, and he starts to his eyesight starts to get slower and slower until they actually overwhelm Todoroki and capture him. And then Zuko goes up to Todoroki and is like, you see, Todoroki, this is why you need to use your full power. You can't keep handicapping yourself. If you had your 5 steps, you could have won. And Todoroki's like, you don't know me. Stop it. And Zuko's like, gosh, it's your quirk, not his, man. It's your quirk. You know, I've seen people that don't have quirks and they would kill to have your quirk, and now you are here limiting yourself because you think the fires are gonna take over you. What kind of sad excuse is that? Come on, fight, stand up and fight and show everyone why you're the strongest. That's what you came here to prove, right? And Zuko's like, well, that's what you want because you like limiting yourself. And it's about to throw Todoroki out, and Todoroki just bursts into flames, and he's like, alright then, Midoriya, if you say so. And he throws fire and ice while Zuko's dodging it using his shadow clones. And Todoroki's like, time to end it. And he does his final attack, and Zuko's like, crap. And he just makes a bunch of clones as much as he can. And everyone just sees freaking thousands of clones just burst out and just flying everywhere and just dismiss in the air. And that's when they see Todoroki out of the ring. And they see Zuko out of the ring too. They're like, wait, what? Like, it's a tie? What? And they just see Zuko pop. Like, and everyone's like, wait, what? Where's the Zuko? And Zuko, wow, the ground's kind of annoying. And it was like, Zuko Midoriya won. He went underneath the ring. I don't know if that's allowed, but Todoroki's off the ring. And Zuko Midoriya wins. And it was like, and all that ish. So yeah, I'm gonna skip to the next fight. It's Zuko versus Bakugo. I'm not gonna lie, there's no need for me to explain this one. It's basically gonna be the same fight I explained earlier in the What If, where it's more of exchanging that, and Zuko comes up with a new technique. He's like, this is the finisher, and Bakugo's, wait, what? And Zuko's like, Zuko Midoriya barrage, and he does the same thing like Naruto does with his Naruto barrage, the Uzumaki barrage, and he freaking slams into the ground, and Zuko has clones twist him into the air, spinning him faster and sending him like a missile down to Bakugo, hitting him into the gut, defeating him, claiming the #1 spot in the sports festival. So after a few days, everyone comes back to school, and Aizawa shows them the results of the sports festival, and Izuku, of course, has the most offers for internships. And everyone's jealous, and they realize, wait, why are we having internships? They're like, well, because you guys are going to do internships. And like, well, don't we need hero names for that? And yeah, anyways, so yeah, they start to pick out the names, and I'm gonna say Zuko's hero name is the the clone hero, Multi-Man, or aka the Shinobi. Yeah, it's between those two, just whatever. No, screw it. I'm gonna say the Shinobi. I like the Shinobi more than the Multi-Man. Even though it makes sense, Multi-Man, but I like Shinobi. So yeah, Izuku's walking down with Uraraka and Eden when he has a request for All Might to meet him, and Izuku's like, wait, All Might wants to talk to me? He's like, yeah. And All Might starts to explain that he's very impressive and his quirk is going to be very useful in the future. And that's why his own mentor, his own master, offered him a internship because he said he sees potential in you. And Izuku, without a doubt, just took his offer up. And he's like, don't you want to? Nope, I'm going to go the way of my win. And he's like, all right then, kid. So yeah. Izuku goes to where Gran Torino is, and he sees it's just some raggedy house, and he enters and he sees an old man on the floor, and he's like, okay, he's dead. And Izuku was about to call 911 to get him some help until he comes up and all that stuff. And Izuku thinks this is a joke until Gran finally just turns it up, and he starts bouncing around the room and he's hitting Izuku, which actually annoyed Izuku. And he said, come on, kid, use your quirk. And Izuku uses his quirk, trying to go around the room, going after Gran Torino. And Gran Torino's easily able to defeat Izuku's clones and hit Izuku. And he's like, what the hell are you able to do that? He's like, alright then, kid. He said, you want an internship? Here's an internship. So yeah, basically in Gran Torino's internship will tell Izuku that he's using his clones in just such a trivial way. He's just using quantity over quality. It's like, kid, try to make a clone. That's just, you put so much energy into it that it's just like you. And it's like, I've never really tried that. He's like, come on then. So he tries that, and Izuku does make a clone, and it's kind of, it's close. His strength is quite close to him. He's like, you see, now you have two strong people, and you see, and like Izuku's like, huh, I could find out the possibility, especially, and he starts rambling on. So yeah, Gran Torino and Izuku just start working on that until he decides that Izuku's done enough and it's time to do some hero work. So they go on the train to some city until Nobu just comes bursting through the tracks, and Gran Torino decides to take him on and tells the kid to stay here, but Izuku doesn't when he realizes that Ida's here. So he jumps out using his clones as a cushion, and he starts running building to building, using his clones as bridges to walk over on buildings. So switch perspective, we just see Ida trying to fight Stain, and Stain easily cuts Ida and lick his blood. And he starts to explain to him that the world is just, this society is filled with plenty fake heroes and all that stuff, and he's gonna get rid of them, and only the good ones will stay, the true heroes, and you are not part of it. And he was about to stab it until Izuku comes along with the clone coming. He's like, not on my watch, and Stain's like, you shouldn't shout out your presence, and he dodges it, and Izuku's like, I agree, and he's already close to Stain behind him. He's like, wait, what? And Izuku punches Stain off, and Stain's like, wait, what the? There's two of you? And Izuku's like, alright then, and Izuku's like, Ida, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm okay. He's like, why can't you move? He's like, I think it's a part of his quirk, and he licked my blood, and suddenly I couldn't move. Wait, Izuku, what are you doing here? And he's like, I came to save you, stupid. I came to save you, stupid. So, shut up, alright? And he's like, what? And Izuku just goes to fight Stain, and Stain's like, you really want to challenge me, kid? You really want to do that? And Izuku's like, I'm extremely okay with that. And he brings out kunai, two kunais, like how Kakashi, like, if you guys watch the final, damn it. Okay, you know Asuna, like how he has that knife blades and the knife goes down. Like he has the kunais like that. And the Stain's like, alright then, kid. You want a hand-to-hand fight? Let's go. And Stain's using his daggers to do that stuff, and Zuko's using his kunai, and they're just going on this awesome fight, and Ida's just witnessing it, and he's like, whoa, Midoriya, such finesse and speed. And Zuko's fighting Stain, and Stain's like, oh, this kid's pretty good. What the hell? And Izuku's just there focused, and he's like, cool. And Izuku's like, you didn't see it. And Stain's like, wait, what? And the other Izuku clone came in and again and freaking swung him from behind, and Stain was rocked since it was hit by behind, and Izuku freaking uppercuts him, and Izuku thinks he knocks him out. So he goes to Ida to check on him, and he's like, Ida, are you okay? And he's like, look out, Midoriya! And Midoriya gets slashed. And Ida's like, Midoriya? And that's when he just, and he's like, oh, that's a clone. And Zuko gets up, he's like, Stain, you really are good. And Stain's like, I'm not gonna let some stupid kid ruin my plans. And he gets a rage boost, and he's about to freaking run at Izuku until he gets blasted by fire by Todoroki. And Izuku's like, oh, Todoroki, thank God you came. He's like, I got your text, Midoriya. You're lucky I figured it out. And Izuku's like, alright, I found out his weaknesses. He is good at he's good at hand-to-hand combat, but he has no finesse. All right, I'm gonna draw him to another fight, and once I give you a signal, you're gonna blast him with a amount of fire. All right, and the Todoroki's like, all right. He's like, but wouldn't it be better? Come on, Todoroki. We already know that you're not so good at hand-to-hand, and you're not good to hand, and Stain is a specialist in that. We need a non-specialist for that, alright? He's like, fine. So Izuku's like, come on, Stain! Let's finish this! And Stain's like, and he picks up his blade, and he goes freaking storming at Izuku, and Izuku relaxes, like, and he throws kunai. He throws shuriken at Stain, and Stain's hitting it away with his knife, and he finally gets close to Izuku, and Izuku makes a clone to take the brunt, and he makes another clone so then they do a double punch, and Izuku just starts beating up on Stain, just overwhelming him, having 3 clones all jumping him, and all they just move perfectly in unison, and Stain has no opening to recover or make another hit, and Izuku sees that, and Stain tries to throw a punch, and both of Izuku's clones grab his arm, and Izuku punches him in the gut, and he's like, Todoroki, now! And Todoroki's like, alright then. And he throws a freaking blaze of fire, and Izuku makes a clone to push him out the way, and Stain's like, huh? And he gets hit, he's like, and he's kind of like burning, he's like, I won't let you. And Izuku's like, and Izuku kind of smiles, he's like, alright then. Finish it off, Ida. And he's like, Ida. And he just gets reciprocal kick from the back, and he gets knocked out. And they kind of just like, and they finally capture Stain, the hero killer. So yeah, Stain still goes on his rant and all that stuff, and the Nomu try to take him out, take Izuku, and then he kills him and all that stuff, and everyone still gets inspired by him. And the chief still comes to talk to him, and they said that Endeavor's gonna get the credit, and all that stuff still stays the same. So finally they go back to school, and they talk about the internship was interesting. So then finally it's time for the final exams, and they take the test, and Izuku does pretty well, getting around like 6th place. Well, screw it, I'll put him out. No, yeah, I'm putting him out. Let's say he gets, screw it, he gets 2nd place. You know what I mean? Because, 2nd place. So yeah, and finally they go and do the second part, the combat points. And all the heroes and Nezu are there, and he starts explaining what the test is gonna be. And Izuku and Bakugo find out the opponent is gonna be the one and only All Might himself. And they just like, crap, we're in trouble. So this time Izuku and Bakugo actually make a plan, and it's really riding on Izuku if this actually works. So yeah, they start the test, and they go in, and Izuku makes about 50 clones to scout out the area to see where All Might is, and it looks like, well, there's no need for that. And they see All Might all the way at the end, and he does a Detroit smash. Well, a smash that does a pressure wave, and he pushes Bakugo out the way, and he jumps out of the way, and the wave just goes down, and Izuku's like, alright then, Bakugo, remember, we need to finish this quick, alright? And Izuku's like, and Bakugo's like, right. And they come out, and Bakugo's like, ah! And he really pulls out his gauntlet, and he's like, take this, All Might! And All Might gets hit. He's like, huh, you think? And you think that would stop me? And All Might pushes the smoke away, and he just sees like 100 Izuku with the same gauntlet, and All Might's like, wait, what the? And it looks like, I can't believe it worked. All of them in unison. So it's like, I didn't think my Quirk be able to copy Bakugo's tech, but after studying it for quite a long time, it actually copied with it. Get ready, All Might. You're about to lose. And All Might kind of does a scream like, ah! And all of them just pull at the same time, and they all combine. And they all just start running for the exit, and they both pass the thing. And All Might is there, kind of a cartoon crisp, like, I didn't sign up for this. And everyone's just like, they beat All Might so easily. They're like, Izuku carried that team and all that ish like that. So finally they go to the mall and all that stuff, and all that goes the same with Shiragi going in, and nothing really happens, and afterwards they call the police. So time for summer camp, and they arrive, and they're not greeted well when they have to just go through a whole forest and all that ish. And they go through the forest after 4 hours later. I think it's 4. And they're all starved and all that stuff. Then they eat. And I'm going to skip forward. And they ask what Izuku's going to be improving on his quirk. And he said he wants to improve on more combinations with his quirk. And maybe trying to build on his base strength, to get these clones up to par. So yeah, Izuku does that, developing more combinations with these clones he can make. So yeah. Finally at the night they have the thing, and the villains attack. And Izuku realizes that Koda's in trouble, so he decides to head out for Koda. And one clone of his will stay here. So Izuku goes and he sees Koda, and he uses one of his clones to slingshot him, and he kind of Superman punches Muscular when he wasn't in his muscle form, and he takes Koda and he throws him back to his other clone, and Muscular's like, that hurt. And this time Izuku, he realizes that this guy is Muscular, and he's seen on the news what his quirk can do. So Izuku realizes that he needs to get rid of this threat now. And Muscular's going on his rant like all about that stuff, and Izuku realizes he needs to live up to his name and become a shinobi. So Izuku pulls out a kunai that he always has in his pocket, and he makes another clone, and they both sneak around. Muscular while one stays behind, and he's talking to Muscular. Muscular's like, let's get this started, kid. And two clones just come on behind, and they stab him in the freaking back, and like, ah! And Izuku's like, no! And he makes a bunch of clones, and the clones are like, alright then, Midoriya Barrage! And they're like, grr! And they finally hit him into the air, and Muscle's like, and he's feeling the pain from the freaking the kunai in his back, and he's like, I need to transform, and Izuku's like, no! And he freaking goes up to the air, and Izuku has about like 10 clones all into the air, just punching Muscular. And since Izuku does have enhanced strength, it kind of hurts Muscular, and they're like, no! And they all kick him into the ground and all, and they knocked Muscular out before he can do anything. And Izuku just kind of sighs in relief, because he knows the devastation that Muscular can do, and that would have been a little too much for him. So Zuko saved Koda, and Koda's really thankful. So, and Zuko's like, there's no time. So he makes a bunch of clones just go around the forest to locate everyone and get them back. He was able to do that, and finally one of his clones was able to reach Bakugo, and he asked Bakugo if he was okay, and yeah, he told him that they're dealing with this guy, and besides that, he's okay. So yeah, Izuku heads over to his way, and on his way he meets up with Shoji, and he needs to deal with Tokoyami. So he comes to the plan that they need a fire user. So he lures Dark Shadow to Bakugo and Todoroki, and that the Dark Shadow takes out that guy, that guy they were fighting. So yeah, it's a win-win, and they're all together, and they're walking, and that's when they see Uraraka and Sue being harassed. harassed harassed by Toga and all that stuff, and they all meet up and they come to regroup, and they say, where's Baku and Togoyami, and Compress is behind there, and Suke's like, crap, we need to get up there, and they come up with the same plan as in the anime, and they slingshot him, and Shoji guides him, and Izuku makes a clone to grab Compressor, and it's like, nice, and they tackle him again, and they're able to take Tokoyami back, but Dobby was there, and he made a flame wall, and he was able to grab Compress. He's like, come on, Compress. He's like, yes, and they all go back, and he's like, goodbye, and they're like, damn it, that Bakugo, and all that ish. My voice. So yeah, afterwards, all the aftermath, they're in the hospital, and in Momo's room, talking about having a plan to save Bakugo, and after that argument. So yeah, they finally head out, and the same people as in the anime decide to go. So the same thing happens, and all that stuff, and all that jazz. So in this time, they're gonna have to, for the plan, they decide to rely even more on Ida, and Ida had to push himself to go up there, and this time Izuku made like a clone ladder holding each other's leg for Bakugo to come easier. It's like, come! And Bakugo's like, and he came, and Izuku used the clones to like bring up to the front, and he dismisses all the other clones, and they're able to rescue Bakugo, and All Might has his fight with All for One, and all that ends the same. So finally, after everything was done, Izawa informs them that they all would have been suspended besides Bakugo, since they weren't supposed to get involved in all this ish. So yeah, Zuko develops his tries to develop an ultimate move with Octoplasm, since he has a clone in Quirk too, and Octoplasm's just like, why don't you just make a swarm of yourself? He's well, oh, yeah, I guess so. A tsunami of yourself, I guess so. So yeah, and all that jazzer happens with the provisional license exam. I don't really like that, so we're gonna just skip that. And Bakugo versus Deku doesn't really happen because they already had their fight in the beginning, so that's fine. So Muriel comes into the class, and he starts telling them all about the work study and all that stuff, and he decides to fight them, and I'm not going to change none of that because he really does destroy them. So Zuko's like, wait, it's been quite a while, maybe I should call up Sir. So yeah, that's what Izuku does, and he calls out Sir, asking for if he could do a work study, and Sir's like, you asked me for a work study when you haven't called me in so long? Wow, Izuku. And Izuku's like, well, I'm sorry, sir, I thought you would be busy, and I didn't think you would want to see my voice, and so he's like, yeah, that was the right answer. I did not want you to call me, but fine, I'll let you come to the agency. since I do see some potential and you could be used to Miro. And he said, wait, Miro's at your agency? He's like, yes. He's the prodigy I've been telling you about. And it's like, whoa, he really was a prodigy. He was able to take up my whole class and not break any spread. He's like, what do you expect? He was trained by me. And all that ish. So yeah. And Izuku goes on his patrol with Mirio and they meet Eri, and Izuku wanted to bring him in, but Mirio told him that they need to stay with the mission. What? That really scared me. And stay with the mission and all that stuff. So they tell Sir what happened, and they realize that they made a big mistake. So time goes past, and they finally get to do the Overhaul raid. The Chisaki raid. So basically, most of that honestly goes the same, and that's when Izuku and all the pro heroes come crashing in, saving Mirio. And Izuku is tasked to, after seeing his sensei Sir being impaled, Izuku fell into a rage and decided to fight Overhaul. And Overhaul first laughed at Izuku, and Izuku's like, it's not funny. And this time Izuku just makes a swarm of himself, but this time not having like half or a quarter of it. They all have this full thing, so it's kind of scary. And Overhaul's like, you think a bunch of clones is gonna scare me? And Izuku's like, no, these things are different. This time they all have my full power. And they're like, wait, what? And Izuku has like about 500 clones of himself, just all like his base strength, and they're all freaking swarming on Overhaul, and Overhaul's swiping them away like, whoa, and all that stuff. But Izuku eventually just made even more, and they're able to tag him down, and they start just punching him all in unison, making the punches even stronger. And Izuku puts even more for him to strain down, and Overhaul de-instructs himself, and he tries to re-instruct himself, but this time Izuku's clones got in the way, and they're like and Overhaul's like, what the? And Izuku just punches Overhaul, and Overhaul is like, and he wanted to get up, but he doesn't have arms and legs, and he's like, gotta re-instruct. But the clones get in the way again, and Izuku just pounds on Overhaul, and Overhaul's like, rah! And kind of has a burst and puts them off, and he re-instructs himself. He's like, time to end this. Eri's mine. And Izuku's like, no, you almost killed my master. I won't let you get away with this. And Izuku's like, multi-shadow clone, Midoriya tsunami. And they're like, wait, what? And Izuku just goes beyond his limit, and he's like, and he just starts yelling, and 10,000 clones just start swarming up, and the swarm of it just looks like a freaking tsunami, and they just come burling to Overhaul, and Overhaul's like, what? And all of them full with Midoriya string. The Midoriya string, Midoriya is not a normal at this point. He's like a mutant. He has unlimited energy right now. And the clones start swarming Overhaul and start just beating him down, and eventually he just keeps getting hit, and Izuku looks above the clones, and he shouts, Overhaul, it's over. And Izuku jumps off doing flips, and he comes in with a missile punch, and he knocks out Overhaul out, ending everything. And everyone's like, what a unique way to defeat him. And it's like, damn. So yeah, that's where I'm gonna end it off today. I hope you guys enjoyed What If Deku Had a Shotgun Quirk movie. So yeah, I'm gonna do movies more often. So yeah, hope you have a nice day, and see ya.